So most airlines as well offer flight pay. So that 75k is just a basic salary. So this will be the first time that you ever fly passengers in your life. And then you have the guys that just found it easy from start to finish. Then you will guarantee your success. I can promise you. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to get into a flight school within the next 4 months so that you can start your pilot journey from today. If you listen carefully, you're never going to have to watch another YouTube tutorial on how to become a pilot ever again. First of all, you're probably asking yourself, who's this young British Asian guy that's telling me this amazing bit of information? Well, I've been a pilot for the past 3 years. I've flown for 2 different airlines and I've flown with hundreds of different captains. During my journey, I've accumulated loads of knowledge, made loads of mistakes, and gotten to this position where I can now give back to you guys as to how you can do it in the most simplest form I can possibly describe. If you use these methods well, you are going to be able to enter some of the top flight schools in the whole of Europe. I've helped multiple clients of mine get to these positions with this exact framework. So if you implement it well enough, you will also be in the same position as them, where they are now in these flight schools working towards becoming a pilot. A client of mine started with absolutely zero experience of aviation. He was just interested in becoming a pilot. He spoke to me through Instagram and we started formulating a pathway as to how he could become a pilot. He's now in one of the best flight schools in the whole of the UK, and we got him there within 4 months. If you're someone who loves to travel, appreciates a work-life balance like no other job in the world, you'll get to explore different cultures, new opportunities. You'll be able to grow exponentially within the industry as soon as you've got the qualifications and licenses to do so. So what's stopping you if you're someone that aligns with? If you're someone who wants a flexible job with a great work-life balance, someone who wants to travel the world and explore new different cultures, someone who wants to wake up in the morning and have a purpose to going into work. And when you finish work, you're not thinking about work in your time off and you can actually enjoy your rest and downtime with your family. If that aligns with what you believe and what you want from your life, then listen closely because I'm going to show you exactly how you can become a pilot, where all of these things that I've listed can become a reality for you. I spent £100,000 for my pilot training. Airlines agree on £1 million contracts in order to get flight schools to give them the best pilots and candidates. If you can implement these methods that I'm about to describe to you, then I have no doubt that becoming a pilot is within your grasp. So I'm back in my office and here I'm going to outline exactly how you can get from nothing to a pilot. But first, we're going to go over how the general method of doing things tends to go. So first and foremost, you get into an area in your life where you decide, I want to become a pilot. Now, where do you go from here? You need advice. So what do you do for advice? You go onto YouTube, you look up videos like myself, you speak to friends, family, see if anybody knows any pilots out there that you can speak to. You'll go on Google searches trying to find out how to become a pilot. You'll try and reach out and DM kind of pilots out there and see if anybody responds and if you can get an outline for yourself as to how to do it. The outcome to that is a lot of days and hours of research and a lot of time and money that you spend trying to get this information. A lot of it is in vain and is wasted, so it ends up basically wasting your time where you could be building and developing your own skills in order to be getting to that spot of where you want to be way faster. So you end up spending at least about 4 or 5 months just in this phase here where you're going through YouTube, you're going for looking at friends, trying to find out as much information as you can, and then you don't actually start anything within that first kind of window of 4 or 5 months or so. But then you finally find somewhere that's telling you the information or rough or thereabouts of how to get into it. So you apply for a flight school. This can also apply to an airline. If you're already finishing, you could be in a position where you're looking for a job, and it's almost exactly the same. You're going to be in the same position here where you're looking for advice. You're going to be looking on YouTube, friends, family. You're going to go into Google, try and find a job for in the industry. Do your best to kind of get as much information as you can, and then you'll try to apply for an airline or a flight school with the limited experience of applications and flight schools that you already have. You're going to try and apply. Now there's two routes you'll get to here. So one, you won't make it into the flight school or airline of choice, and two, you do make it into the flight school or airline of choice. So first we'll go through if you don't make it. So what will happen? And first of all, why have you not made it? So the reason being is because you've tried to collate kind of snippets of information and have your own interpretation on it, and as a result you've not been able to actually constructively come up with useful information that you can offer to these assessment days and these interviews, and so then you don't look like a strong candidate to these airline interviewers or flight school interviewers. So you didn't stand out because you've got very generic answers, and it's all been collated from this section here where it's YouTube, friends, family, Google searches, all of that stuff. I mean, most people tend to go to those areas for their answers. So yours just didn't stand out, so you didn't make it, didn't have any prior knowledge, and was going in there basically hoping your life would change, because they would want your life to change, because they want you to become a pilot. The reality is, yes, they do to some degree because they're a business, but at the same time, they're not going to accept everybody. They've got this standard that they want to keep and set, especially most flight schools in the UK and Europe. They'll want to keep a high standard of their cadets. So they're not going to accept everybody and anyone. You have to show that you are going to pass their exams and you're going to improve their statistics. Because something that I found out recently was everybody at this stage here, where they're looking for advice, they're needing advice, and they get here, there's about 95% of people that are interested in becoming a pilot, that would want to be a pilot, but there's only 5%, and this absolutely shocked me, 5% of people can actually make it to the point where they become an airline pilot. Only 5%. The rest of them are going to go throughout their whole career aspiring for it, but never actually making it. And the reason being is because they're not given the right guidance, and they kind of go here for their advice. They go to this section here and they don't have the right guidance, and no one's supporting them along this long journey that they're going to be going through. But anyway, so what's next? Once you've been rejected from a flight school, you've got two options here. You either give up or you start again. And what do they do when they start again? They go straight back to here where they need advice, and they go back to the YouTube, friends, family, and they try and find another flight school. And then it's like an endless cycle here for most people. And then by the time they've spent hundreds and thousands of pounds wasted on kind of all of this process and failing it each time, they end up giving up, and they become part of that statistic of 95% that basically don't make it. Now there's the other route. Now you do make it into a flight school, you apply for that flight school and you make it in. Then you're given a start date. Well, after that start date, you've got three sets of people. The first is the people that struggle throughout training and don't make it. The second is the people that struggle from start to finish, but they still just about make it through by the skin of their teeth. And I will tell you, within that 5% of people that wanted to be pilots and made it, 95% of those pilots are going to be in this bracket here. 95%, because it's not an easy road and it's very difficult. And then you have the guys that just found it easy from start to finish. And I'm going to go through why they're in these brackets in a second. So first we'll start with struggle throughout training from start to finish, and then they never make it into becoming a pilot, and they join that statistic of not making it. So what did they do? They spent valuable time on useless information. They went through books, spent hours and hours going through books that basically had no value to them in their training. And so they basically wasted loads of time that could have been spent more productively and helping them achieve their goal. They tried to reinvent the wheel and come up with their own solution of doing things. They've got their own methods, and rather than using proven methods of learning and optimizing their training, they decide, I'm going to do it my way, and I'm going to try and kind of make it as efficient as I can and go against the grain and just do what kind of works for me as an individual. But that doesn't always work. Sometimes it does, but most of the time this doesn't work, because you're going to end up falling back into this bracket where you're using valuable time on useless information, which you won't necessarily have to do if you're following a script to some degree. So this area of people, then they end up failing and not making it as a pilot. Now you've got the next group of people, so their attention and all of their priority is in one particular area of the training or one particular subject, and they neglect every other subject. And so, for example, a lot of people might focus really heavily on the academic aspect and basically neglect the fact that they're going to be flying an aeroplane in a few months. And then when they're doing the skills tests and the flying aspect of things, they end up really struggling in that area of their flight training, because they've only learnt from the books, and they've not developed any skills outside of the books in order to prepare them for the actual flight training. So those guys end up falling somewhere along the pathway of the skills tests and all the pressure that involves, because they're in their comfort zone of just academically revising for these things, and they've neglected the fact that they're going to have to also be applying these things in a practical way. It can be on the flip side, where they struggle on the academic side, but they've done so many hours of flying in the past. They've come into the course thinking, oh, I've flown like hundreds of hours, so I don't need to revise. And then their focus is solely on the flying aspect of things, because they think, I'm going to be ace that. They split their attention unevenly, and then they end up failing on the academic side and not making it from that aspect. Now we have the guys that made the mistakes, but didn't improve upon their mistakes. They just made the mistakes, and then they kept repeating those mistakes, making them over and over again without any kind of advancement or improvement. And then they ended up basically just failing and getting kicked out of the course or not making it as a pilot. And then you have the guys that tried to do it all alone. They didn't want any help from anybody. They just thought, I'm going to do this by myself because I've got the best method of doing it, and no one else can tell me my method is not as good as theirs and whatnot. So those are the kind of categories that you fall into. And then what happens? You don't make it. And what's next? What do? You either give up or you start again all the way back from the beginning, where you have to go, what do I do now? I need advice. I need YouTube friends, family. And then you go back down this massive cycle again. So now we go on to the struggle from start to finish, but still make it. So why do they struggle from start to finish, but then they still end up making it? Now, they worked super hard and long hours. So they knew what to do, and they just thought, I'm going to stick at it because this is a blueprint that's worked. So I'm going to stick at it and work super hard in order to get there. And most pilots fall under these kind of categories of people, where you just work really hard and it's going to get there in the end. You just have to keep going. And what does that require? It requires strong motivation. You need to be super motivated in order to be able to do that. You've got to basically ensure in your mind that there's nothing else that's going to distract you from completing this exercise or completing this quiz or completing this particular question or learning this particular subject. Or even when you're flying, you're going to work your absolute heart out to make sure that you know exactly what turn to make next and how you're going to make that turn. So you've had to have very strong motivation in order to do it. And most pilots that make it will have this feature particularly. Now, another aspect to it is that you had a few friends along the way that would help you with parts of your training. For example, you've got guys that are in the courses ahead of you, and you've asked them like, oh, how do I kind of like do this thing, and or like, what does this involve, what does this test have, and you get feedback from people. That will ensure your success as well. So you have to make sure you've got a community of friends that will help you along the way, because if you don't, then it's going to make it very, very difficult, and you'll fall back into this guy who tried to do everything alone. And you don't want to do that. You need a community of friends. You need someone to help you along the way, because you're not going to be able to do it by yourself. And now the other aspect is that they made a lot of mistakes, and people do make mistakes. None of us pilots are infallible, okay? So we all make mistakes, but we learn from them. And this is the key. And this is something that you're going to apply for the rest of your career. Any mistake you make, you need to learn from that mistake. It's a universal law in the aviation industry that any mistake that happens, you report it and you learn from it. And that's super important as a pilot to understand. And then what happens next? You've made it, so you're in a good position, surely. But actually, it does end up having some negative traits on a person. So when it's been such a struggle to get to this point, you end up having a sense of imposter syndrome. And I've met like multiple guys that have got through their training and then just got into a flight deck and thought, wow, like this is a bit too much for me, to be honest. And I don't think I actually deserve to be here. I've just kind of like been spoon-fed everything, and I'm just here by sheer luck and chance. So you get a sense of imposter syndrome, and that is very dangerous, because for you to feel like that, that's going to impact your confidence. That's going to make you perform very negatively when it comes to actually flying on the line. You're going to be afraid to do training ever again. So even when it comes to like developing your career, you're going to be thinking, do I really want to like change jobs and like learn a new aircraft? Do I want to do anything other than what I'm doing now? You're gonna be so traumatized by the fact that training was so difficult. because you've got a fear of making mistakes, and you've got a fear of having to suffer again, because that's probably how you felt during the training. You felt like you were making mistakes, and and you had to endure a lot of suffering throughout your training, and you don't want to have this kind of mindset when you're in a career like being a pilot, because you want to adopt a mindset that development is key to your success. You could also end up with low self-esteem because of how damaging and how tough the training might have been along the way. Now we have the other kind of pool of people where it was easy from start to finish, and that kind of pool of people, I would say, is about 1 to 5% of pilots in the entire world, because not many pilots find it easy from start to finish. But why would you find it easy from start to finish? First and foremost, you've got a background in flying. So if you've flown like for hundreds of hours, and you used to be in the military, and you flew for kind of like the military, and you've got that backing before you step into the airline world, that will massively help you. So it'll make it a lot easier. It will still be difficult, and that's not to negate that, but it will be a lot easier than the general population of pilots. Another aspect is you sort out help. So if you can get the most amount of support, then you will guarantee your success. I can promise you, if you can get the right support and the right people around you, this will carry you through your entire training, and not only make it an enjoyable experience for you, but it will guarantee you success. I mean, when you look at the statistic of 95% of people that wanted to become a pilot actually made it, you can almost compare that stat with the NBA. If you're a guy that's aspiring to become a basketball player, the likelihood of you becoming a basketball player is 1% of that however many pool of people that really want to become basketball players. And how do you do that? You have friends around you that are going to push you and keep you going and motivate you. You have a coach, you have a mentor that's going to help you along this entire journey to get to your goal of becoming a pilot or becoming an NBA star, whatever you want to do in life. You need someone with you. You need people with you to support you on that journey. Another method is that they've optimized their learning methods, and that can be hand in hand with the people that you seek out help with. If you can get someone that's going to optimize your learning methods, you can find books or advice out there that's going to optimize the way that you learn. You're going to be ensuring your success on any course, not let alone pilot course, which is probably one of the harder ones, but you're going to ensure success on any course that you do. You ask questions whenever you're unsure about something. If you decide to just kind of sit there in your lack of assurance, you're going to suffer in the long term. You have to ask questions. You have to make sure you put your name out there. If you're struggling with something, you really have to make it known to people. Otherwise, you're never going to make it as a pilot. And one thing that is really, really important as a pilot is that you are very self-aware, in that you're not going to be perfect. You can make mistakes. So just own up to those mistakes and ask questions. If you can ask yourself a question about flying every single day, you are going to guarantee that every day you're going to improve as a pilot. Finally, in this category of people, the reason that they would have made it very easy for themselves is that they had solid help from start to finish. It's to reiterate that sought out help that I mentioned earlier. If they have a solid partner or solid person that's guided them and helped them along the way from start to finish, you will not imagine how much easier it can become to do a training course and become a pilot and go through all of that difficulty if you have the right guidance and help around you. So what happens next when they make it? They've iterated their knowledge. So all of their accumulated knowledge, they've advanced upon and they've enhanced it. And so they can continue to develop. And they're not afraid to develop either, because they're in a position where they've had the advice and now they can advance upon that advice and carry it on into the rest of their career. They enjoy their job because they know a lot about it. They've got the knowledge behind them to ensure that they're not feeling insecure about whether or not something's right. They know that what they're doing is correct, so they feel assured and they actually enjoy what they're doing, and they don't feel hesitant in any of the decisions that they make or anything that they do throughout their career. And then when they finish, they've also built a community of friends who have helped them, and they can enjoy time with those friends. I've got loads of friends that have helped me, and I still communicate with them. Cool. So I've just taken off my hoodie because now we're getting to the serious stuff. The step-by-step on how we're going to get there. So where do we start first and foremost? The first thing you've got to do is make sure that you are medically valid to become a pilot. So medical validity is the first kind of hurdle to jump over. Make sure that you can obtain a class 1 medical, because if you want to be an airline pilot, which obviously is the goal, You've got to be able to meet that standard. And you can book that through any AME. They're known as an AME. In the UK, there's a couple around the London area, and then I think there's a few up north. I tend to use the ones in the London area. So once you've got the Class 1 medical, you can also get that if you're in Europe as well. There's other AMEs, and if you're in the US as well, it's the same thing. It will all be the same. You just have to make sure you get that Class 1 medical. You can search that online and get that. Then we'll go into the documentation, because you want to basically outline for yourself where you're going to be going from now till then. So you're going to want all the documentation to be in order. So you want any flight hours you've done to be logged. You want all of your work experience and educational experience to be logged as well, and just write it all down, everything that you've done throughout your entire life. Basically just write it on a piece of paper, and then from there you're going to create yourself a CV and a cover letter, which you're going to put forward to the airline or aviation school of choice. And this step by step, this also applies if you finished your training and you're applying for an airline, and it's almost like a cycle. So you're going to have to do this when you start, when you initially want to go into a flight school, and then you're going to have to do it again when you finish your flight school. So this is all kind of a bit of a cycle in terms of how you do it. So you want to get it right the first time, so that the next time you do it is going to be just as easy as the first time you did it. So yeah, you're going to get the CV and the cover letter all cleared, and make sure that it's very kind of like very applicable to the job that you're going to be applying for, or the flight school that you're going to be applying for. And it addresses kind of some of your key experience points and why you want to be a pilot, and those kind of key aspects, especially in the cover letter. The CV, you just want to highlight all of your experience, especially associated with flying. I would even put your own section when it comes to the flying experience, if you've got any logged hours, and just even if you've got life experience in like doing STEM camps and stuff. If you put that in a separate section, that's also kind of a good idea in my opinion, because then there's like a whole area that you've dedicated to just your piloting journey. So after you've done the documentation aspect of things, you're going to go on to finding the right flight school for yourself. And there's a number of things that you've got to basically look at when you're choosing a flight school. First and foremost, you want to make sure you get the right licenses, and I'll discuss those later. But there's a certain kind of like pathway that generally most people follow, and you've got to make sure that you get all of the licenses that you're looking for within this flight school. If you don't, then you've got to have other backup flight schools that will get you the licenses that you need. But you have to be joining this flight school knowing that they're going to offer you the correct licenses, and not like some random ones. For example, if you're in the UK and you join a flight school but they're only offering European licenses, then you're going to be stuck when it comes to getting your full airline transport pilot license, because it's going to be only applicable to European countries. So you've got to be really careful that it's the correct licenses and it's in the correct state. Now, when you're also choosing, try to choose, if you can, a flight school that's close to your home, because one thing that I realized when I first started out was going home and having your support system around you is so helpful. But not only is it helpful from a psychological point of view or mental point of view, it's also helpful from a financial point of view, because obviously if you ever need food and stuff whilst you're training, you can quickly go back to your house. Or if you're like me and you're close enough to the flight academy or the flight school, you can even commute from home. And that's something that I did to save a hell of a lot of money whilst I was training. So make sure you try and find a flight school if you can that's close to your home. But again, if you're happy and comfortable moving away, that's absolutely fine as well. I know a lot of people prefer to be closer to home, but then a lot of people also prefer to just kind of move out and like start from fresh somewhere else. In terms of the time frame, you want to make sure that the flight school's time frame is going to be probably one of the best ones out there. So you want to make sure that the time frame that they're going to get you from now till the license that you're looking for is going to be the shortest amount of time possible. Generally, most people want to do it as fast as they can so that they can get in a job and start working. But if you can find a flight school that suits your particular time frame, that's also a great trait to have when you're looking for a flight school. Other things as well, these are kind of like mandatory, but you have to be able to meet the educational requirements. So whatever the educational requirements are in the UK, when I was applying, you had to have a certain amount of GCSEs. You didn't need A-levels, but you did need to have a certain amount of GCSEs. And then the visa requirements as well. So you have to be able to work or study in that particular country where the training is going to be held. So for example, if you're applying for a flight school that sends you to America, but you've been like banned from going to America, then obviously you won't be able to apply for a flight school like that. But you can check the requirements, the actual physical requirements on their websites as well, and then make sure that it's a price that suits you, because there's a lot of kind of flight schools out there at ranging prices. So choose a flight school that suits your price range. If you can lock off an optimal way of training, then it actually doesn't matter what flight school you go to, as long as you get the licenses, really and truly. I mean, the flight schools that I would recommend are the ones that basically have airlines tagged with them, because you'll then be more likely to be offered a airline interview at the end of your training. But if you can't find anything that suits your price range, because these particular flight schools are just charging so much money, even though they've got like these tagged affiliations, in today's current situation, by the time, if you were to start today, by the time you finish, there will be so many job opportunities available, because there's a growing shortage of pilots at the moment. So I think just try to find one that suits your price range, but just bear in mind as well that some flight schools particularly will charge more because they have a tagged association to them. If you can afford it, I would definitely recommend those, because you're more likely to get an airline interview with those particular flight schools. Once you've done that, once you've found like a bunch of flight schools that meet these requirements, make a list of the top 3 flight schools. And this is a general guideline which my clients basically go through. So we'd have a plan A option, a plan B, and a plan C. The plan A option will be time and cost effective. So they'll get you from start to finish in the least amount of time, but with the lowest amount of cost as well. So we'd have to kind of average out and see what kind of we can compensate here or there in terms of the time and cost. But the plan A option would also be one of those flight academies that have an airline tagged with them. So we would then have a plan B, and that would be based off of which airline out of our list is going to get you from A to B as fast as physically possible, ignoring the cost. Of course, the cost might be an aspect now, but if you can get onto the course, you can then try and get a loan and get any extra cash that you possibly can, because you know that you're going to finish the course as fast as you feasibly can anyway, and then you're going to start earning as fast as you feasibly can too. So that aspect is why that is our plan B option. And then plan C is going to be, so if all else fails, we'll just go for the most cost effective plan, because where we lack in terms of the time efficiency, we can make our time efficient by being cost effective. Generally, the cost effective aspect of it would probably go down a modular route, because the plan A and plan B are usually the integrated courses, and if all else fails, we'll go through the modular route, because the modular route is cheaper, and if you're working with someone like myself, we'll get you there in almost the same time frame if you can afford to do that. So yeah, the cost effective plan is plan C. People generally, and this is why they don't make it, they generally prioritize this one. They will look for the most cost effective way of doing it, and that's why they don't make it, because the most cost effective way will be at the detriment of the time. And then when you're taking years and years to do pilot training, it basically leads to hundreds of other problems and mistakes that you're going to be opening yourself to. So the best way to do it is time and cost effective, but through most likely an integrated course, which is what I really heavily encourage. If you can't, if all else fails, then we can go through the cost effective route, which is a modular course. But we would actually approach that, me and my clients would approach that almost like an integrated route, where we're going to go and hammer through everything as fast as we feasibly can, because I've actually done an integrated course, so I know what it involves, and I know what I can offer to the table to make sure that this cost effective plan is going to get them from A to B as fast as feasibly possible, as if you're doing an integrated course. That being said, we'd submit our applications for all of these. Hopefully we'd get offered an interview for some of them, and then we'd prepare for these interviews. There's methods that you can use to prepare for these interviews. There's a STAR method of answering questions. You can draft the questions out, make some examples, use something like ChatGPT to make some example like interview style questions for yourself, and then just do as much research as you can into the industry. So the research element will solidify your understanding of the whole industry, and it will also give you confidence when you're walking into those interviews, to understand that, yeah, you know what you're going to be talking about because you know your stuff. And then I'd say one of the most important aspects and elements of any interview is mentally preparing yourself for it. So making sure you are in a physical and mental state that you are fully ready to put your entire body and soul into this interview, because that is probably one of the hardest parts about taking any interview. You're telling them why you deserve to be in that position. So you're going into that interview with the mindset that you're already there. You're just proving why you should be there. If you can approach it with that mental attitude, then you're going to be very confident as you go into the interview, and you're going to be able to deliver a good representation of yourself. So we'll take the interview and we'll pass it. If you don't pass it, obviously you're going to have to go back to square one and kind of look at your plan B options and plan C options. But we'll take the interview and we'll pass it, most likely. If you've prepared well, then you will pass it. I can assure you of that. The hardest part is the preparation, but that is the most important part in anything in aviation, in anything you do in your whole life. When you prepare well, you will take the interview and you will pass it, and then you'll start your training. And again, preparation is so key because you want to prepare. You want to be prepared to start your training. You don't want to just go into your training unprepared, not knowing anything. Just get as much information as you feasibly can, so that when you start, you're in a position where you're fully prepared and ready to go. And that way you can ensure the most chances of success when you start. Some of the things that you can do to get as much information as you can before you start: go onto Google, try and search up as much ATPL knowledge as you can, or anything about the flight school that you can, and how the flight school is going to be structured, and just get as much information as you can so that when you go into the course, you're going to be fully ready. You can go on YouTube, kind of search up the same thing, like, is there any information on this particular subject which I'm going to be studying? Look at books, try and buy some books if you can as well, like have a read through any kind of ATPL books that you can find before you start. Make friends with other cadets that you might have met on the interview. Try and like add them on Facebook or something so that you guys can prepare together. They might have useful information from someone else that they can offer to you. DM other pilots as well. They might be able to point you towards the right direction. Like myself, if you want to DM me, my Instagram's in the description, so feel free to DM me and I'll definitely point you towards the right direction as well. And then if you can, look for mentoring. This area right here is something that nobody offers right now. So I'm the only pilot at the moment that offers any kind of mentoring. So if you're interested in that, go into the description, you'll find my Instagram and reach out to me, and we can definitely start your career. And not only will I help you at this stage where you're preparing to start your training, I will help you from the start, from here all the way to the finish, which is here. I will help you from start to finish. Okay, so please reach out to me and we can start that program so that we can get you as fast as feasibly possible. Like I said, there's a 4-month window where everybody wastes their time. I mentioned it earlier here. There's a 4-month window over kind of this period where they're trying to get advice, that they waste their time doing absolutely nothing. We can expedite that. I could get you from here to here in a week, and then from there we can basically get you into a flight school within 4 months. So just bear that in mind. If you are interested, I offer that. So just go into the description and we can definitely start with that. But yeah, once you've got as much information as you can, you'll start the course and you'll build upon that foundational knowledge that you've basically gained from all of these kind of like these steps. You're going to build upon that knowledge and you're going to apply it when it comes to actually applying for an airline as well. So make sure that all of these steps are done to the best possible ability that you can, especially kind of like the CV and cover letter, because when it comes to applying for an airline, you're going to have to do this whole process again, and you're going to have to pass. Now, let me outline the career of a pilot for you, because I've gone into a lot of detail as to how you can do it, but let me just show you in terms of the structure of how it will end up going. Your career will go from now, if you've got nothing, no experience whatsoever, till the end of your career. So how does it go? The start date. You're going to have a start date of whatever we've decided. You're going to be fully prepared for it. You're going to pass everything. You're going to pass the 14 ATPL theory exams. I don't know why I put theory. We're going to pass the 14 ATPL theory exams. You're going to go into a PPL or CPL stage, depending on if you do modular or integrated. But you'll eventually end up with that CPL. So that's the important part. Once you've got the CPL, you'll go into the IR phase, which is the instrument rating. So you're going to obtain an instrument rating. That will take about 3 months. Then you'll do a UPRT course, which is about 2 or 3 days. to get a UPRT license as well. And then you'll do an MCC. Now, this MCC is so important when it comes to your training. Make sure that everything you do before this point has prepared you for this MCC in the best way feasibly possible, because you want to make sure that that MCC, your record on that MCC is like spotless. So make sure that all of the kind of like the hurdles that you go through here, it's going to be tough, all right? It is going to be tough, but make sure that you have the most optimal way of learning. You've got the most optimal kind of tools in your arsenal to prepare you for that MCC, because that is what the airlines will be looking for. They will be making sure that you do well and excel on this particular aspect of training. Because if you don't, and I've seen it before, where people have fallen at this particular stage and they've no longer been able or eligible to get any kind of job, and they've been stuck after all this kind of training. They've been stuck, so they're just going to like instructing or something similar. So make sure this area, this is the break point for people. Make sure that area is locked off. I mean, in my mentoring, I prepare a lot of people for this particular area here, because I want them from here. This is going to propel you into the airline assessments, type rating, everything else. So this is so crucial for if you're trying to become an airline pilot. Then we'll go into the airline assessments, and that stage you're basically going to follow that framework that we started on. And then when you got the job, you'll go into a type rating. That is kind of a 6 to 7 week course where you're going to learn how to fly the particular aeroplane that the airline flies. So, for example, with a company like EasyJet or British Airways, when you start out, you're going to be learning how to fly an Airbus A320, and you're going to be doing an Airbus A320 type rating. Once you pass that, you'll actually do base training. So I haven't included that there. So I've just added it because I've actually forgotten that it even existed, because it's only one day. But you'll do base training. But you do base training, which is basically taking off and landing on a real aeroplane for the first time ever. So you'll do your base training, and then you'll go into line training. So once you've done your like takeoffs and landings, and they've signed you off that you are able to physically fly a big aeroplane, then they'll put you into line training, where you're going to learn how to fly a normal line flight. So operate in terms of everyday kind of passenger flying. So this will be the first time that you ever fly passengers in your life. And once you complete your line training, you'll do a line check. And then once they pass you on the line check, which means they'll make sure that you're suitable as kind of like a line pilot. And a lot of people fail there as well. And it all comes down to the lack of fundamentals here. So you have to make sure this particular part of your training is done to the highest standard that you can possibly do it, because it will impact the rest of your whole career, to be honest. So this line training aspect, you pass that, you get through that, and then you become a second officer at most airlines. Some airlines, you'll go straight into a first officer. And the average salary for a second officer is about 60k. You'll stay on that salary for about 2 years, and then you'll go and become a first officer. When you become a first officer, your pay will probably jump up to about 75k. Or thereabouts, and you'll stay on that for another 2 years. So most airlines as well offer flight pay. So that 75k is just a basic salary. You should get a bit more on top of that per flight that you do. And then you'll go into a senior first officer after about 2 years. And that will be 85k or thereabouts, depending on what airline you're with. And then you become a captain. And in the UK, it's about 130k for captains. It can be a lot more as well, depending on the airline that you're in and whether you're doing long haul or short haul. But this is just a short haul kind of example. It's about 130k when you start. Then from the captain, you're basically open to do whatever you want after that point. You can either go into a managerial role where you become a base captain and a regional base captain and stuff. Or you can go into a training role where you become a line training captain, you become a type rating instructor, type rating examiner. That's entirely up to you as well. But you can also do other jobs as well outside of that. You can do recruitment, and there's so many other kind of like areas you can go into. And you can actually jump into these areas at the senior first officer and first officer stage at some airlines as well. So just bear that in mind. But the opportunity for progress is basically endless after you've gotten in there. So this is the hard part, but this is so important. And every single stage of this journey relies on each other. It's like a domino effect. If you can do every stage of this journey as best as you possibly can with the least amount of mistakes, you're going to get through to the end, and you're going to be able to choose whatever you want to do in the end. You're going to be a really fully fledged commercial pilot, and that is the goal. That's the aim. You don't want to fall short here at the IR stage or fall short at the MCC stage. You want to be able to pass all of these in the best way you physically can. And like I said, it all comes down to getting the right help. When I go back to here, when I literally mentioned it twice, sought out help, had solid help from start to finish, asked questions, that you can't do alone. Asked questions, like you can't do that alone. You've had a background in flying, or someone's helped you from your family and stuff. Optimized learning methods, you can't learn that by yourself necessarily. So these things, you are going to need someone to help you and guide you along the way. Like I mentioned earlier with the NBA example, every single person, even if you take it to a comic book reel, when you think about superheroes and Professor X in the X-Men, every single person that's achieved great things has required some kind of mentor, some kind of advisor or coach that has done it before, that can help them and streamline their process. So if you are interested, give me a DM. I'm probably one of the only people out there that offer this service. So just bear that in mind. You will be amongst one of the top 1% of pilots, because you're going to have real physical guidance from an actual airline pilot from start to finish. And not many people will be able to say that they've got that guidance. So when it comes to being part of that 95% statistic, you're not going to end up falling short at any of these stages, because I'm going to make sure that you get from start to finish, and I'm going to make sure that you become an airline pilot, and that you don't become one of those statistics, and you get through all of these parts of your training in the best way possible, in the most optimal time frame. Now, there's a lot of guys that say, oh, like I'm not ready to start yet, like I'll start in a few weeks and whatnot. If we can start from here, it's all a domino effect. If we can start, if you're in like 17 years old, you've got 6 months left of school and whatnot, if we can start from this stage right now to get you ready and prepared, I mentioned it multiple times, preparation is so important. If you can get ready now at this stage where you feel like you're not ready, but we can prepare you to be ready, then you're going to have such a smooth time going through all of this kind of training. It's going to be a million times easier for you. So I urge you to take action and prepare yourself, and make sure that you're in a mental state that you're fully ready and fully prepared to start your training. So I hope that this has helped you guys. I hope it's given you an idea of how you can become a pilot. I hope I've outlined it as clearly as physically possible, because that's my goal with this video. That's why it's taken me so long to talk about it, and why I'm still talking about it. But if you're really interested in becoming a pilot, and you genuinely, it's something that you've always wanted to do, I am here and I am available. Please just DM me. I'll get back to you. I'll respond to you. We'll book in for a call and we can discuss it. Okay. I'm here to help you guys. This is why I've started. I was told when I first started training that I would never become a pilot. I've made it and I've done everything. And this is why I'm coming back to you guys and trying to help you guys, because I've been given doubts. I've been fed all of these lies and throughout my whole life. I've gone through loads of mistakes. I've made those mistakes. I've learned from those mistakes, and I don't want you guys to make the same mistakes. I've spent loads of money that I didn't need to spend. I've gone to loads of different countries that I didn't need to go to. I've had to fork out different kinds of loans, and this journey has not been easy for me. I don't want you guys to have to go through that kind of pain and torture and make those mistakes at your detriment, because I've already done that. I've already gone through it. I've made those mistakes. I've seen other people make worse mistakes. I've learned from them, and I can provide you with all of that valuable experience. And all it would take is for you to just shoot me a DM. So that being said, thank you so much for listening to this video and making it to the end of the video. I hope that you've taken some value from it, because that was my goal in even producing this video. And if you're ready to start, shoot me a DM. We'll get started.